Welcome to this week's Hymn of the Week. This week we have ELW 592, Just As I Am Without One Plea. Charlotte Elliott wrote the text for this hymn, the music by Bradbury. The text has a great story and history to it, very powerful actually. The Charlotte Elliott at 32 came down with a serious illness that actually left her a semi-invalid for the rest of her life. So she continued to go through a spiritual crisis and depression ever since then. Now, when she was 45, she wrote this text as a statement of faith. And I have this from this is coming from the Studies of Familiar Hymns, second series, Lewis Benson. However, these are the words of her nephew, Handley. And here is the whole history of the hymn. But ill health still beset her. It often caused her the peculiar pain of a seeming uselessness in her life, while the circle around her was full of unresting serviceableness for God. Or serviceableness for God, we should say. Such a time of trial marked the year 1834, when she was 45 years old and living in Westfield Lodge, Brighton. Now let's remember, stopping just for a second, that we have this being 1834, which is now she's 45 years old. When she was about 32 is when she initially had that illness that basically made her an invalid. So let's go back to the source here. Her brother, the Reverend H.V. Elliott, had not long before conceived the plan of St. Mary's Hall at Brighton, a school designed to give at nominal cost a high education to the daughters of clergymen. In aid of St. Mary's Hall, there was to be held a bazaar. Westfield Lodge was all astir. Every member of the large circle was occupied morning and night in the preparations, with the one exception of the ailing sister, Charlotte, as full of eager interest as any of them, but physically fit for nothing. The night before the bazaar, she was kept wakeful by distressing thoughts of her apparent uselessness, and these thoughts passed, by a transition easy to imagine, into a spiritual conflict, till she questioned the reality of her whole spiritual life, and wondered whether it were anything better than an illusion of the emotions, an illusion ready to be sorrowfully dissolved. The next day, the busy day at the bazaar, she lay upon her sofa. The troubles of the night came back upon her with such force that she felt they must be met and conquered in the grace of God. She gathered up in her soul the great certainties, not of her emotions, but of her salvation, her Lord, his power, his promise. And taking pen and paper from the table, she deliberately set down in writing, for her own comfort, the formula of her faith. Now what's interesting, when she first had come down with this really severe illness at the age of 32, there was a Swiss evangelist, I'm going to get his name for you here, called, his name was Henri César Malin, and he was a very instrumental part in the writing of this hymn, because when he visited Charlotte, she mentioned to him that she did not really know how to come to Christ, and he responded by saying, well, you just need to come to him just as you are. And that's how this formula of faith was begun years later. Now, originally, this had 7 verses, just as I am. I have them here right in front of me. We do have the without one plea, the tossed about, wilt receive, and then we also have love unknown. So those are verses 1, 2, 5, and 6. Here are the verses that were left out. Just verse 2, sorry, that was 1, 3, 5, and 6. So verse 2 was left out, just as I am and waiting not, to rid my soul of one dark blot. To thee whose blood can cleanse each spot, O Lamb of God, I come. So we can see definitely the depression there. Another verse that was left out, which would refer to some of her challenges, but is in many other hymnals. Just as I am poor wretched blind, sight rich is healing of the mind. Yea, all I need in thee to find, O Lamb of God, I come. And the other one is that last verse, just as I am of that free love, the breadth, length, depth, and height to prove, here for a season then above, O Lamb of God, I come. Now, the tune by Bradbury is just another great example of great hymn writing, and it actually feels like there's a refrain, but there really isn't. That O Lamb of God, I come is just part of the regular meter of the hymn. So here is Just as I Am without one plea. Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou biddest me come to thee, O Lamb of God, I come. Just as I am, though tossed about with many a conflict, many a doubt, fightings and fears within, without, O Lamb of God, I come. Just as I am, thou wilt receive, wilt welcome God and cleanse me, because thy promise I believe, O Lamb of God, I come. Just as I am, thy love unknown has broken every barrier down. Now to me thine ear, thine alone, O Lamb of God, I come. It's a beautiful statement and formula of faith, and it just reminds us again of the hymns that we have today they're living, breathing testimonies of how God has changed and worked in people's lives. And those testimonies are now being sung as not just worship, but also glorifying God. As we know in the scriptures, one day we will all bow down to Jesus Christ. Thank you very much for listening to Hymn of the Week.